New- Think about new projects that our club can do. So feel free to wander around the Eastern Shore, talk to people and see if things are needed, if we can help anyone. Um, One of the things I also want to bring up is we do have a few things going on. We have a caboose project going on over at the Cape Charles Museum. We have several volunteers already from the club. And if you'd like to volunteer to help us out, I'm expecting sometime next week, we are going to get started on the roof of the caboose. Where the paint has come in. We picked up a number of supplies. We've got a few other supplies coming into Northampton Lumber that aren't there yet, but we hope by the end of this week or sometime next week that that material will be in. Of course, it's going to be dependent on the weather too. But I'll keep people posted. We're looking for volunteers, whether it's members or members' friends. Please let me know. Bob, do you have any updates on your project with the fire hydrants?
No.
Okay, short and sweet. All right, how about the basket raffle? Mehdi, are you kind of in charge of that again?
We are collecting donations from merchants. We have sent our letters and we've been receiving positive answers, and I'm going to visit the merchants that I am in charge with next week, and I'm sure that Jackie and Mary are doing their jobs too.
Okay, all right, excellent. And let me see. We're going to get an update here sometime about the YMCA support when John Burtis is able to join us. I know he's busy right now. I think he told me he's doing a write-up on that. So we'll get some more on that the next meeting that John is able to join us. Paul, do you want to give us an update on COVID?
Yeah, the incidence of COVID in the state has increased, and that's felt to be due to the Delta variant, which is the dominant variant now in the United States. It's much more contagious, so it's spreading in areas of Virginia that have a high rate of not being vaccinated. Just same as the United States, there are pockets of areas in Virginia that where there's number of people vaccinated is not a very high percentage, and those are the areas in which the Delta variant is spreading. It's spreading particularly in Virginia Beach. The incidence is higher in Virginia Beach than it is in the state as a whole. The good news is that in our county, we had no new cases this past week and no new cases in Cape Charles. And we have a high vaccination rate relative to other areas of Virginia in Northampton County, which is great. That's kind of where we're at. If you know anybody that's not vaccinated, beg them to get vaccinated because they're at high risk for getting this Delta variant.
I think what I read, we're getting very close to 50% across the nation fully vaccinated, and there's another about 7.5% that have at least one shot. So we're getting close. Paul, what I've read, correct me if I'm wrong, if we get to 70% vaccinated or in some way immune, which can also include people that have survived a COVID infection, if we get somewhere between 60 and 70%, we're getting in that herd immunity area. Is that correct?
Yeah, that was a guess by experts as to what a reasonable goal would be. In our county, we're about 70% fully vaccinated, if I recall correctly, and that's undoubtedly why we don't have any new cases here.
Yeah.
So 70% would be a good goal. That's between 70 and 80 would be better.
Yeah, yeah. We have about 48 million people that are 12 years old and younger, and there is no vaccine for them yet. So that's somewhere around 14.5% that there's no vaccine for yet. So we have to consider that too. Bill Payne?
Yeah. A question for Paul. What do you know or think about this requirement for a third shot or a second shot in some cases for the Delta variant?
Well, the consensus among experts is that if you've gotten 2 shots from one of the 2 messenger RNA vaccines, then you are protected against the Delta variant, and you don't need a booster at this point. No one is quite sure when that immunity will wane. It's just we'll just have to wait and see. The Johnson and Johnson is probably not quite as protective against the Delta variant, and people with that, might ought to consider getting a booster.
Okay, any other questions for Dr. Paul? Okay. We're going to talk about this next week. Next week is our assembly meeting, but I just wanted to bring this up so you can be thinking about it. We're always looking for ways to increase membership, and we're interested in all ideas.
No.
Yeah.
I'm sorry? Okay, we're always interested in ideas. And next week's the assembly meeting, and we're going to talk quite a bit about ideas on increasing our membership. So over the next week, just kind of think about it, keep it in mind, or scribble some notes down. We're going to be open to all ideas. A reminder, August 17th, 6 p.m., we're going to be meeting in Central Park in Cape Charles, and it will be catered. There'll be adult beverages. Probably, I'm thinking those might be a cash bar. Am I right on that for any adult beverages? We'll get more out on that. The week after that, we're going to have district governors 3 club meeting up at the yacht club. And our district governor, Debbie Wall, will be there. That'll start at 5 p.m. Here shortly, I will get out a sign-up sheet. I'm working with Monica Bridgeforth right now to see what the dinner options are going to be. Is it going to be a la carte, or are there going to be X number of dinners that you select one? And so that will go on. 5 o'clock will be the cocktail hour, and then after that will be dinner. I've been to one of those, and it's really a nice ceremony. We'll need to know from Monica whether they have a fire code limit to how many people can be inside their facility. So she'll get me that information. So it is a 3 club deal. And if there is a limit, it's going to be sort of first come, first serve. And then when we hit that limit, we'll have to cut it off. So please take a look at what I send out on that and a sign up sheet. Let me know whether you're coming. And of course, guests are welcome as well. And we'll get you some details on that. We are still looking for an awards committee chair needed. And just real simple, all we're asking for is someone that would take information from the rest of the club members that say, hey, I put in 5 hours painting a fence for this retirement home. Well, that's Rotary hours. And all you need to do is just let that person know, who is the chair, hey, I did these 5 hours. And that person, all they're responsible for doing is logging that. And at the end of the month, calculate that up. Here's how many service hours the club put in, and we can take that over to the district, and we can be actually given recognition and award for our club for the hours we put in for all the work that we do. So we're looking for someone who can do that. Dr. Paul is a great example of a numbers guy. So is Randy. And we're looking for a similar person to do that, to keep track of our service hours. Along with the membership thing, invite friends and neighbors to our meetings. Not only a Zoom meeting, but also when we start meeting back in person right after the holiday weekend, Labor Day weekend, have them come to a lunch with us or one of the last meeting of the month socials. They don't have to join, but just come and enjoy the company, talk to me or any of the other club members and learn a little bit about Rotary. I think that's a real good way to try and increase our membership. As I mentioned, next week is an assembly meeting. We're going to concentrate on membership and ideas on how we can increase our membership. And I'll actually have Bill Payne discuss the different types of membership. Probably some people don't realize we have different levels of membership that we can bring people in. And that also makes the amount of dues vary for that person. So if a person really wants to get in the club and help us out and volunteer and so forth, but they're a little tight on money, there are other membership options for joining us in the club. So again, keep in mind ideas for membership for next week's assembly meeting. That's what I had. Does anybody have anything else they'd like to bring up or any questions? All right, Bill, how about we do this? What's next? He's searching around on the screen and we have Happy Dollars. We're having wonderful weather. Finally seeing a lot of people down here on the shore with smiles on their faces out and about. People got to be happy. So who's the first one that's happy today? Reggie.
Yes, I'll give a $5 Happy Dollar contribution for the fact that we had the luxury of having Dr. Joe Wallach on with us today. He's a very well sought after speaker all around the world. So I'm thankful that he's with us today. So $5 to the Happy Dollar pool. All
right. Anyone else?
Yeah, I've got two $5 Happy Dollar packages. One, I'm happy because my youngest son is visiting with me for a few days here, and we've been having a great time. And the other Happy Dollar is because my Jackie is on the program. Wave, Jackie. Jackie, wave.
Where is she? Are you
She's
in California?
right below Reggie.
Okay.
And
No,
above Dr. Mark. So Joel, that's our third doctor, Mark Clark.
Okay, is Jackie still in California?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's her daughter behind her.
Yeah,
I can tell by
you got to add one more doctor.
That's right.
These are medical doctors.
Yeah, we got Medi also.
Okay. Well, I am a doctor of education, and that's very
okay.
valuable.
So we've got 5 doctors.
Okay.
How you doing, Jen?
I'm awesome. It's a beautiful day in Southern California.
Stay with your mother.
She got to keep up with me.
All right, Alan.
I have 5 Happy Dollars. On Thursday, we pick up our daughter who's coming in from Saudi Arabia after her COVID-19 experience, but she'll be spending a month with us. She gets plenty of vacation, so she'll be here for a month. We're looking forward to that.
All right. What is that? Probably about a 10-hour flight or something?
Oh, something like that. Yeah. And
those are brutal.
Frankfurt, and then to Dulles, and then to Norfolk, and so forth. But,
yeah. Anybody else? Okay, well, we do have Linda Tyler and Dr. Joel Wallach with us, and I want to allow Reggie, who knows them pretty well, to introduce him. Reggie?
I'm unmuted. Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, thank you so much. I've known these individuals for a long time, known Linda for about 20 years and Dr. Wallach for over 10 years. And they've been tremendous influences in my life and my family's life. So it's a pleasure and an honor for me to introduce the speaker today, who's Dr. Joel Wallach. And just for the sake of not missing a couple of key things, I've made a couple of notes here because I could go and talk about it for a long time and perhaps miss some of the key things. But Dr. Joel Wallach is a renowned, world-renowned physician, actually, a veterinarian. He's a lobbyist, comparative pathologist, as a speaker, author, biomedical research pioneer. He's also a Nobel Prize nominee, a scientist, agriculture expert, and he's a visionary on helping individuals to understand how to stay healthy naturally. I'll tell you a short story about me. 30 years ago, I had a heart-to-heart talk with my medical doctor. He started to put me on medications for different types of things. And I asked him, I said, doc, how long am I going to have to be on these medications? And he said, probably for the rest of your life. And that did not set well with me. So we talked about it a little. And I said, I'd like to try and see if I can find some other ways to stay healthy and avoid some of this. And he said, Reggie, yeah, absolutely. If you can find some other way that works, that's great. I mean, he was supportive and I really appreciated that. So, 10 years ago, 11 years ago, I met Dr. Wallach after I had worked for like 20 years on trying to be healthy on my own. He really, really showed a lot of things that I had missed over those 20 years as it related to being healthy naturally. So 10 years ago, I met him. And one of the things that impacted me, first thing, in one of his seminars was, he made a statement. He said, I love talking about arthritis because it's so easy to fix. And, I said, that's crazy. I mean, I know so many people who deal with that on an ongoing basis, but he said it. And since then I've seen it over and over and over that he helped to resolve those types of issues naturally. So without any further delay, I'd like to bring him on and ask him to tell a little about himself, a little about his background, and then we'll get into some more specific things that we would like to cover on today's call, Doc. Can you hear us, Doc? Are you with us?
Yes, I can hear you. Thank you so much, Reggie. And I'll just take a few minutes. Basically, what makes me different, I grew up on a little farm in Missouri. We didn't have electricity till I was 9 years old. And between the ages of 4 and 9, I was very disruptive, very aggressive, would knock down adults and kick them around because I could throw bales of hay around on the farm. So I was very strong for a 9-year-old. And finally, a little pediatrician by the name of Mary Jane Skeffington in St. Louis said, look, he needs to be hospitalized. He needs to be put in an institution because he's going to hurt somebody or kill himself or something like that. And I asked my mom what that meant. And she said, well, they're going to put you in a hospital for a while. I said, well, how long am I going to be there? She said, well, if they can't fix you, if you've seen 20 doctors, they don't even have a name for what you got. So you might be in there for the rest of your life. Well, that didn't sound good to me. So when everybody else was asleep that night, I'm 9 years old. I'm sitting on the end of my bed saying, well, I don't want to go to a hospital for the rest of my life. What's going on here? The animals in our yard we're going to kill and eat in a couple of months. So they're getting the same food I'm getting. My family's getting the same food I'm getting. But wait a minute. Those animals, we're giving them alfalfa pellets with vitamins and minerals in it. So the next morning I threw the Cheerios out to the chickens. I went to the barn and I got a big bowl full of these alfalfa pellets with vitamins and minerals in it, put milk in it, and did that for 3 days for breakfast. I cured myself after 5 years of getting worse and worse and worse, and 20 doctors couldn't figure it out. Just 3 days, I cured myself with alfalfa pellets with vitamins and minerals in it. So when I was 9 years old, I knew that's the kind of the direction I wanted to go for healing. And to make a long story short, I got into scouting. I was an Eagle Scout, explorer, Order of the Arrow. I had 32 merit badges. By the time I graduated high school at age 18, I already had the equivalent of a college degree. Boy Scouts have 135 merit badges. Girl Scouts have over 200 service pins, which are the equivalent of merit badges. And they cover every sort of interest you can think of, from car mechanics to farming to animal husbandry and swimming and sports and first aid and so on, and public service. And so that's kind of was my beginning. I got into agricultural school and I just wanted to learn to be a good farmer and go back on the farm. But one of my classmates said, why don't you, I'm going to go apply for veterinary school. Why don't you come? I said, I didn't come here, but just come on. So I got into veterinary school, and 2 years into it, I ran out of money. So I had to work at the pathology department to kind of pay for my schooling at the University of Missouri. And I said, well, look, since I'm doing all this pathology work, can I get any credit towards a degree? They said, well, yeah, we can give you credit for that, take some courses and so on. And so to make a long story short, in 1961, I was 21 years old, and all the professors were off for Christmas holiday. And I ran into the first mass die-off in America from pollution. 500 sheep died in one night. They were perfect 6-month-old sheep, ready to go to market in 2 weeks. Beautiful wool, beautiful lamb chops, ready to go. But they all died in one night. And I tracked it down. I'm 21 years old. Because of my background, though, I was able to track it down and find out that the neighbor to this farmer had been using too much nitrate fertilizer. And the thyroid glands in these sheep were about the size of a plum. They should have been the size of a pecan. And so they all had hypothyroidism. But why'd they all die in one night? Well, in Missouri, because the Mississippi River goes from the north all the way down to the Gulf of Mexico. If the wind is coming up from the Gulf of Mexico to Missouri, in the middle of winter, it can be 50, 60 degrees there. If it's blowing from the north, from Wisconsin and Minnesota and Michigan, it could be 20 below zero. And so the temperature had been running 50, 50, 50, and then the night 500 sheep died, had dropped down to 19, and they all died of hypothermia. Got that published, and that was my first publication. And when I graduated university, I had my degree in veterinary medicine. I had my degree in agriculture. I was halfway through my degree in pathology, and I went to Iowa State University to finish up my degree in pathology. And I had given copies of my paper to Marlon Perkins, the old Mutual Omaha Kingdom show, and Barry Commoner, who was the head of the Department of Biology there at Washington University in St. Louis. And they together used my paper on the mass die from pollution to get a $25 million grant from National Institutes of Health. They had me come back from Africa, where I was working on the white rhino conservation project, caught and saved 200 white rhino, which amounted to today. We're looking at 25,000. Where back then there was only a little over 400. Very proud of that. And I did 20,000 autopsies. My thesis, 5,000 pages, was in the Smithsonian Institute as a national treasure. And this is because I showed there were no genetically transmitted diseases. There were no genetically transmitted birth defects. And this was the beginning of a science called epigenetics. And myself, along with Bruce Lipton, are considered the two fathers of the science of epigenetics, which has replaced genetics. And, I could go on and on and on, but I'm going to jump into, let's see here. I'm going to go ahead and jump into the pandemic, because everybody was talking about that earlier. And vaccines are useless unless you're doing two other things. Vaccines don't kill viruses or bacteria or fungus. They just lure your body to bad DNA and RNA from the viruses and bacteria and fungus. And if you cannot respond to the vaccination, then there's so many people dying. They've been vaccinated twice. They're still dying of COVID. Well, that's because they're not doing the other two things. The other two things is you have to totally 1,000% avoid gluten. No wheat, no barley, rye, and oats. No wheat, no barley, rye, and oats. You have to live like an Asian. That's why Asians have like 1% of the death rates of COVID that we have. They have 1% of the infections of COVID that we have. They're exposed the same as us, maybe more because of where they're at in the Pacific. But they don't die and they don't get the disease. If they do, it's very mild, because they do other things. Number one, they eat rice and maize, corn, sweet potatoes, and beans and squash. They don't eat French bread and French toast. They don't eat Italian spaghetti like the Pope. Diverticulitis is a very simple gluten disease. I could get rid of the Pope's diverticulitis in 2 months' time, but just by making him eat like an Asian, stop eating like an Italian. They took out half of his intestines, and I guarantee they didn't tell him to stop eating gluten. So he's going to still have diverticulitis problems. And then I have to tell you that the story, of course, gets worse, because when you look at what's going on, Florida, I'll just jump to Florida here. This last Friday, they had 5,000 new cases of COVID, Florida. Sunday, they had 15,000 cases. They beat the record from New York, which is a year-old record from the peak of the pandemic. They had 12,000 infections, but Florida beat them this last Sunday with 15,000 infections. And that's because more than 50% of the people in Florida are Latino, Black, and indigenous peoples. And this makes them eat a certain way. They're eating wheat, barley, rye, and oats. They're drinking wheat, barley, rye, and oats. And this is why they have such a hard time. Well, when you look at say Vietnam with 97 million people, and Peru with let's see here, they have 32 million people. They have like 1/3 the population of Vietnam. Peru has this new variant. It's worse than the Delta variant. It's called the Lambda variant, C37, and they have 194,387 dead and 2 million infections. Vietnam, with 3 times the population, has 81 dead and 17,000 infections. 17,000 is a lot less than 2 million, and 81 is a lot less than 194,000. What's the difference? Well, Vietnam's eating like an Asian. Their bone marrow is good, okay, so they can respond to the infection, and that's what's going on here. In the USA, we're in trouble because people are still eating gluten. They are still not supplementing properly, and doctors say the wrong thing. They always say, when somebody says, hey doc, you know, I'm feeling kind of funky here, this pandemic is going on, shouldn't I be taking some vitamins and minerals? And the doctor will say, don't waste your money on vitamins and minerals, just eat well, you get everything you need just by eating well. That'd be like telling somebody, like a mechanic telling you, don't waste your money on oil in your car, just put dirt from Texas in there, there's bound to be some oil in it. An idiot wouldn't do that to their car. When a doctor says, oh, just eat well, you get everything you need, people follow that advice. Well, in 2003, it came out with a CD called Hell's Kitchen. In 2005, came out with a book called Hell's Kitchen. And it goes into the history of the pandemic, because by then, of course, it all started in 1882 on 3 o'clock in the afternoon, Monday, September 4th, 1882, when Thomas Edison and Jonathan Leaves pulled the switch on the first commercial electric generating plant. Within 10 years, all the industrialized nations had converted from wood stoves and fireplaces to electricity, and we're starting getting, oh, the Asian flu. We got the Spanish flu. We got the HIV. We got polio. All these things started popping up. Then we had SARS and MERS, and we had COVID-2, and now we got COVID-19. Now we got all these variants because our intestines are dead, because everybody's still eating gluten, and they're not supplementing. And so our immune system is down. And even if they're vaccinated, they cannot get mad. I talked to a veteran last night who's crying. This veteran is crying because he says, I was vaccinated twice. I had the vaccines and I'm dying of COVID. I'm in the hospital on a ventilator. I said, well, were you taking all 90 essential nutrients? And he got real silent. Well, not all the time. Were you wearing a mask? No. Were you doing hand sanitizer? No. Were you using our colloidal silver to kill the virus? No. Okay. You have to pay attention to these details, and we can beat this thing. But the vaccinations are only 2% of the answer. Vaccinations are only 2% of the answer.
Doc, you know, one of the things you just said was about the digestive system. And why is it that the digestive system is so critical here, right? I mean, if the digestive system is compromised because of gluten, or could you just explain that and then we'll move on to another topic?
Okay, what happens is your intestines, your small intestines, it looks like a shag rug when you cut it open during surgery or an autopsy. The intestine to the naked eye looks like a shag rug because you have all these villi, these little finger-like protections, which give you 98% of the absorptive surface of your small intestine. When you eat gluten, it produces a product called pro-inflammatory cytokines, which is a poison which kills those villi. And over a period of years, those villi slowly go away and shrink and go away. And when your intestines are now, they look like a plastic tube, and you've lost 98% of your absorptive surface. Even if you're supplementing, you're only going to get 2% of what you're supplementing with. Now, this is why kids who are 3, 5 years old, they get the COVID, nothing happens because they've only been eating gluten for a couple of years. But kids who are 12 years old, 15 years old, they get more serious cases. People who are 25 to 50 years old, they get really serious issues. But if you're over 50, 60, 70 years old, or 80 years old, your villi are all gone. You're like the Pope, you have all these problems, and the COVID comes along, it's going to kill you or do some serious life-threatening damage. Okay, now, the beautiful thing about this is if you get off of gluten and take your 90 essential nutrients, in 90 days, those villi will all regrow back. I don't care if you're 80 years old, they'll all grow back. I'm 82 years old. Most people think I'm 50 when they look at me, but I'm 82 years old, and I've been doing gluten-free since I was 9 years old. I've been doing the 90 essential nutrients since I was 9 years old. And I don't have any health problems. I don't have any pre-existing conditions. I don't have any diabetes. I don't have any high blood pressure. I don't have any arthritis. I lettered in sports at the university, wrestling and football in high school. I was only weighed 110 pounds. They wouldn't let me play football in the university. But if you do everything right, you can add 25 to 50 healthy years to your life. And that's always been my motto. If you follow my guidance, I will add 25 to 50 healthy years to your life. And of course, we're doing a lousy job when it comes to longevity. Human longevity, life expectancy is 155. Our government just came out a month ago and said that. Right now, because of the COVID, our average lifespan is 75. We're leaving 80 years on the table. We're leaving 80 years on the table. Would you rather be spending those 80 years with your kids and grandkids and your loved one as opposed to dying 80 years early? Well, you got to give up the bad foods, no fried foods, no processed meats, no oils, no glutens, no wheat bread, rye nuts, no sugar, no carbonated drinks. Even the diet one's got to go. You take your 90 essential nutrients. We made it easy. We call it the Healthy Start Pack, 90 essential nutrients. And because of the COVID, we came up with the big hammer in our toolbox, which has 215 nutrients in it. Okay, so you just have to supplement with that twice a day based on your body weight, and you're protected, whether you get the vaccination or not.
You mentioned diabetes and arthritis and those things.
Yes.
Why in the U.S., the statistics say that we have a third to a half of the country that are pre-diabetic or diabetic. Why is that, Doc?
Okay, well, diabetes is a nutritional deficiency disease. Type 2 diabetes is a simple nutritional deficiency disease. It's not a genetic disease. Remember, epigenetics, that's my deal. Okay, type 2 diabetes is a very simple nutritional deficiency disease. I take people who've been a brittle diabetic for 30 years, and in 30 days, their doctor scratches his head. I don't know why, but you're not diabetic anymore. We do this thousands of times a month all over the world. We take people who are on dialysis along with diabetes. They haven't peed in 10 years. They haven't urinated in 10 years. They're on dialysis 6 days a week. And in 2 years in our program, excuse me, not 2 years, just 2 weeks on our program, 2 weeks on our program, they're urinating. And so they drop their, after 10 years of being 6 days a week on dialysis, they drop it to 3 days a week. And in 2 more weeks, you're totally off of dialysis after 25 years on dialysis because they didn't want a kidney transplant. All of those things are epigenetics, okay? They're a simple nutritional deficiencies. Type 2 diabetes is one of the easiest diseases to prevent and to reverse. I can't use that C word.
I understand. Another one, arthritis and bone and joint issues. I've known a couple of people in particular who had bone on bone, and they were scheduled for double knee replacements, and they used the program and they actually reversed that. So could you talk a little about, why is it that people suffer so much from that particular disease?
Okay, well, again, a big part of your body is moving around, and it's based on your joints and your bones and muscles and tendons and ligaments and cartilage and that kind of stuff. And these are all based on nutrition. And the Pope has sciatica. Okay, the Pope has sciatica, which is a low back issue, squeezing the nerves that cause pain and numbness in the legs and feet and burning and all that kind of stuff. He's had it for years. He's had to cancel big events because he has so much back pain. I can get rid of his sciatica in 2 to 6 weeks. Okay, he's got to eat like an Asian. He cannot eat like an Italian, which is gluten, spaghetti and bread and all that kind of stuff. Okay, he can't eat like an Italian anymore. He's got to eat like an Asian and take my 215 nutrients, and his sciatica will go away in weeks. Now the surgeons, they surgically removed half his colon when he had diverticulitis, and all he had to do is give up gluten and take the 90 essential nutrients. So they still haven't cured him. They've treated him symptomatically, okay? And he's still in grave danger. He's still in grave danger. Now, I think the one you're talking about is Andy Young, who was the mayor of Atlanta at the time. He's also one of the great warriors and generals in Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s war, on slavery and all that kind of stuff. And so I rebuilt Andy Young, and he introduced me to the Black community all over the place. And Pastor Creflo Dollar, his daughter was supposed to have a autoimmune disease and to die before she was 12. She was on her deathbed at age 12. We only had weeks to live. We gave her the program, and she's given him a lot of grandkids now, and she's a beautiful young woman. Mm-hmm. And then there's Pastor Mike Freeman from, many of you probably know him, from Baltimore, Maryland. He was in a coma, dying, had 2 weeks to live, and Miss Linda Tyler who'd been with me for, I don't know, 8 or 10 years. She said, well, what can we do? I said, well, does he have a G-tube? We can put our stuff through his G-tube. She says, no, you're just giving him IVs to keep him hydrated, but that's about it. I said, okay, just get our plain minerals, just get our plant minerals, which has 78 different minerals in it from seaweed. I want you to take these seaweed plant minerals, 78 different minerals, and I want you to take a cupful 3 times a day and rub them on his back and his hips, his leg. And so Pastor Mike Freeman's wife and Ms. Linda Tyler accomplished that. And in 3 days' time, he wakes up and goes back to work. And he and I made a DVD and a CD called Praise the Lord and Pass the 90. Praise the Lord and Pass the 90. If you've ever been in the military, you know what that means. Praise the Lord and pass the ammunition. God is always in charge, but when somebody's shooting at you, you want some ammo to shoot back at them. Same way here, praise the Lord, but pass the 90. And so we only rubbed 78 minerals on him, and he recovered when the doctors had given up on him and said he only had weeks to live. And so everybody needs to get a hold of that CD and DVD, Praise the Lord and Pass the 90. Get a hold of that book and CD. Let's see here, Hell's Kitchen, and don't forget Epigenics.
Just a couple of other quick people on the front of diabetes and arthritis. You know, a friend of ours named Buck, he was scheduled for amputation years ago. Could share that, and Theo Radcliffe, who's a professional basketball player.
Yes. Okay, I missed the first one. Who's the first one before Theo Ratliff?
Buck Stephan.
Oh, okay. Let's go to Theo Ratliff.
Sure.
Theo was 24 years old. Okay, he was 24 years old and had bone-to-bone arthritis in his knees. He was playing for the Atlanta Hawks. Beautiful young man, right? He was making, I don't know, like millions of dollars. And he had bone-to-bone arthritis in both his knees. Cartilage slipped off his right hip, and he was disabled, and he broke his right wrist and he on his shooting arm. And so they took away his contract, say, sorry, Theo, you know, you're done. And obviously have all these immune problems and things going on. You've got all these things going on with your genetics, and we can't help you. And so a guy by the name of Andy Young introduced me to him. And so I came up with what we call the Healthy Bone and Joint Pack, and we invented a sports drink called Rebound, which has 100 nutrients in it. It's the only sports drink with more than 3 or 4 nutrients. It's got 100 nutrients in it, 75 minerals, and 25 vitamins, amino acids. And Theo's pictures on the front of this. We gave him the Rebound. We gave him the 90 essential nutrients in our Healthy Bone and Joint Pack. And in 3 months' time, he goes back and he gets his job back with the Atlanta Hawks for $35 million. He played for another 11 years, and he made over $135 million after we had rebuilt him, when all the doctors and all the best sports medicine doctors said he's through because he has this genetic problem. No, it's just a nutritional deficiency disease because he was eating gluten, the breakfast of champions, Wheaties, okay, and things like pancakes and waffles and spaghetti and pizza crust and all that kind of stuff, flour tortillas.
What was the issue with Evander Holyfield, Doc?
Well, Evander Holyfield, and of course, he lost his heavyweight championship to Michael Moore during the fight. On the last round, he couldn't come out because he had a life-threatening heart attack. And so he lost the fight to Michael Moore. Well, we invented the Healthy Brain and Heart Pack for Evander Holyfield, and we gave it to him 3 times a day for 1.5 years. And he came back and he beat Iron Mike Tyson to get his heavyweight championship back. Now, who has a life-threatening heart attack and comes back 1.5 years later and beats Iron Mike Tyson to get his heavyweight championship back? Only somebody who's been on the Healthy Brain and Heart Pack for 1.5 years. And Evander Holyfield was just a wonderful guy. And it just, you know, tells you what can be done when you give the body the nutrients and get off the gluten so you can absorb the nutrients. The body is a wonderful thing made by God. We are made by God. And every cell, every tissue, every organ of the body has the capacity to rebuild itself, to repair itself, but it needs raw materials to do that. If you're eating gluten, even if you're supplementing, you cannot absorb the nutrients. You have to get off of gluten, eat like an Asian, which I've been doing for 74 years. And so it's one of those things that, again, here in America, we're giving up 80 years. The longest of peoples are the Hunzas, which the book and the movie Lost Horizon was written and filmed for, Lost Horizon. The Hunzas, in a place, the Giltar Glacier between Pakistan and China, their average lifespan is 120. Ours is only 75. They're leaving 35 years on the table statistically, but so many of them live to be 160, 165. And they're in the newspaper all the time, documented. And these were, the book was written by James Hilton, a very, very vicious investigative reporter for the New York Times and the London Times. And he was sent there to find out why these people lived so long and whether it was true or not. He wrote a big article for the New York Times and London Times on these longevity, these third world people up there in Hunza. And then that's when he wrote the book and made the movie. But we need to follow the people who are setting the example. And when you look at the blue zones, Dan Buettner, who's an exercise physiologist, he said these people have the highest percentage of 100-year-olds in their population of anybody because they're very happy. No, they're very happy because they live so long. And that's because 4 of the 5 are on volcanic islands or peninsulas. The 5th one is a religion that requires a large dose of vitamins and minerals and to stay off of gluten.
Doc, now the United Nations invited you to speak with them a number of times.
Yes, twice.
Okay. And is that because, you know, human beings all around the world have the same issues and they have the same needs for nutrition in the body, et cetera?
That's correct. And of course, that's because of the epigenetics thing. Now you have to appreciate my research and my lawsuits using our lawyer, Jonathan Emord, in federal court. We have eliminated and I was the first one to find a non-human case of cystic fibrosis at the Yerkes Primate Center in Atlanta, Georgia. And they fired me because they said cystic fibrosis wasn't genetic. He said, you must be sniffing glue, Wally, because everybody, that's the classic example of a genetically transmitted disease. So they fired me, which turned out to be good because I went back to school and became a physician, okay? Because I was only a veterinarian at the time. And I couldn't get these companies that make Infamil and Similac to put these nutrients into the formula. And we began to eliminate muscular dystrophy in kids. We were working in Utah, in Indiana, and Canada, and a Navy SEAL by the name of Marvin Rupp, he and I were working with these kids with muscular dystrophy, and we gave Jerry Lewis of the telethon fame about a dozen charts of kids we'd reversed their muscular dystrophy. One of them was 31 years old. After 31 years of being a muscular dystrophy patient, we have reversed it in like 3 months. And we gave Jerry Lewis these charts. He took it to the Muscular Dystrophy Association. They fired Jerry Lewis before he turned around and walked out the door. And that's why you haven't heard about the telethon and Jerry Lewis anymore. Of course, he passed away. He died 2 years after they fired him, probably have a broken heart. But we in April 16, 2013, a federal court ruled in our favor to put those nutrients into the baby formulas. And as an added benefit, not only did we get rid of cystic fibrosis, not only did we get rid of muscular dystrophy, but suddenly now in the Charlotte Observer, a year and a half later, is 2014, front page story like the Third World War. We don't know why, but son of a death syndrome has vanished in the state of North Carolina. Then 3 months later, it occurred in the St. Louis Post-Dispatch and all the newspapers in Missouri. We don't know why, but son of a death syndrome has vanished in Missouri. And 3 years later, not 3 years, 3 months later, every newspaper in the world said, we don't know why, but the diagnosis of son of a death syndrome has dropped dramatically by 85 to 95% everywhere in the world. Well, 10 years ago, son of a death syndrome was 1 per 300 normal babies. Today is 1 per 3,000 normal babies. And if everybody would make sure these babies got these nutrients, there'd never be another baby die of son of a death syndrome. 98% of the babies were in their cribs when they died of son of a death syndrome. I made them change the name to crib death because the mothers weren't laying on them. The 2% that were in bed with their mothers, they were dying of hypertrophic cardiomyopathy heart attack, a simple deficiency of a single nutrient. We put it in that baby formula and we eliminated son of a death syndrome, muscular dystrophy, and cystic fibrosis. So we're very, very proud of that. That's why we went to the World Health Organization and UN.
You did some other research, 1,700 autopsies in China regarding those particular types of diseases, right?
That's correct. Dr. Milan, she is a microsurgeon from China. And of course, she's been my partner for 30-something years. And she, through her influence in China, she set it up so I could go to Heilongjiang province in Qishan University, and we did 1,700 autopsies on kids under the age of 10. 35% of them had cystic fibrosis, 100% had muscular dystrophy, and I think it was a little over 100 under the age of 1 year would have been diagnosed in America as son of a death syndrome. We got that published in 3 languages. The English version is The Biology of Trace Element Research, and 1,700 autopsies. And April 16, 2013, the federal judges couldn't argue against 1,700 autopsies. And that's why they ruled in our favor, to get that nutrient put into baby formula.
Okay, great. I think it's about, it's almost time for us to end here, but I know that Chuck would like to give you an opportunity if you were to answer perhaps a couple of questions.
Sure, be happy to.
Yeah,
We could go on for another hour.
I actually had a couple of things myself, and we'll get to other people too. Dr. Wallach, are you familiar with Dr. Joel Furman and his book, Eat to Live?
I'm familiar with it.
Okay, he says a lot of what you said. I had a new doctor I dealt with in about 2005 named Fred Tawil in Northern Virginia. And he really pushed the Dr. Joel Furman book and ideology of exactly what you're saying. And at that time, I was taking 10 prescription medicines. And by following that, I got that down to 2 prescription medications. So I can kind of testify that what you're saying actually really works. So I encourage people to follow this. It's a little difficult to change your habits at first, but you really do start feeling a little better.
Yes,
It's hard to
absolutely.
change your habits when you're dead.
Yeah. And one other comment, Linda Tyler, Reggie mentioned he met you about 20 years ago. I'm figuring you were probably about 10 years old then. That's all I had. Does anybody else have questions for Dr. Wallach or Reggie?
Good.
Okay, well, it was really a very interesting thing. Reggie and I have had a few.
Yeah, I have a
conversations.
question.
Go ahead, Bill.
Doctor, I really enjoyed your presentation, but you didn't tell us how we get access to these things you're talking about.
Okay, what you do is you get a hold of Reggie and Linda, Reggie Widgeon and Linda Tyler, and they will walk you through this. You can become a preferred customer and you'll pay the wholesale prices. If you got an auto ship, I will pay the shipping. If you become one of our associates, I will give you $500 free worth of business building materials and information and a free website. And of course, you get all the tax breaks of running your business and your franchise out of your home.
And Bill, if I could just add something, if there's interest and people want to know more specific details about specific things, we could set up a separate Zoom from this, from the Rotary meeting, and we can have those. We have Zoom meetings all the time to educate people on the information. Okay.
Hey, Reggie, if you would pass the information, contact information on to Medi so she can get it in the newsletter.
Okay, will do.
Anyone else?
Well, there's one quick question I'd like to ask, Doc. Just a very, very quick thought on Parkinson's disease.
Okay, well, Parkinson's disease, Lou Gehrig's disease, ALS, those kinds of things, Alzheimer's disease, they're all kind of the same disease in the brain. And the brain requires 90 essential nutrients, just like everything else. And it just depends on what part of the brain is more severely affected, what symptoms you get. So they give it a different name based on the location in the brain. And of course, there's all kinds of other things involved, including gender issues and things like that. The hypothalamus tells you who to chase for sex and who you're going to allow to chase you for sex. And if there's anything going on with that hypothalamus, it gets confused, okay? So I'll just leave it at that. Well, people need to eat 3 eggs twice a day with soft yolks. Fried eggs won't count, it'll give you cancer. Hard-boiled eggs don't count. 75% of your brain weight is cholesterol. Nobody should be taking statin drugs to lower your cholesterol, because cholesterol is not the cause of plaque in your arteries. Cholesterol does not plug your arteries. Your arteries are plugged by eating fried foods and eating salad dressings and oils and cooking oils and those kinds of things. And processed meats, like bacon. And eating nitrate-free bacon doesn't count because there's still 8 other chemicals in bacon. And so you need to eat 3 eggs twice a day. Again, I've been doing that all my life, okay, for probably 81 years.
So,
And
so
then-
you're saying that we can work on making the brain healthier as well. I didn't want to get into a long detailed discussion about it.
Okay, okay, I have to say, we do have what we call the Healthy Brain and Heart Pack. That's what we made for Evander Holyfield, but it's not only good for the brain, but it's also good for the heart. Good for the heart, good for the brain. Because one of the things that goes on in the brain, you get plaque in the arteries in the brain, and you get a thing going on where you get vascular dementia, and it can be accidentally cause Alzheimer's disease. And I have taken people who are in a coma in the nursing home for 8 years, being fed through a G tube. Okay, for 8 years, we put our program through their G tube. In 3 days, they wake up and go back to work as a bank vice president.
Right.
These are the sort of things we do. If you go the wrong direction, like they're going with the Pope, he's in danger.
Okay. Thank you so much.
I
Doc.
have a question also. I have a question.
Go ahead,
Hello?
Stan.
Dr. Wallace, is there a good list, a good food list and a bad food list that you have available that we can access?
Absolutely. And again, Reggie and Miss Linda can get that to you. They can be put in that newsletter. That's a freebie. We want everybody to get rid of the bad foods and get on the good foods. And so, no, that's an easy one. Yeah, Reggie and Miss Linda can help you out there easy.
Okay, Chuck, we're ready to close out?
Yeah, any other questions by anyone?
Well, I
Okay.
had a question, just a follow-up on Stanley's remark about whether we could follow your instructions without buying the products and just really knowing the right foods to eat.
Well, it's going to cost you 10 times as much because we put all these things, we put 215 nutrients into one product. You try and get those 215 nutrients for less than $1,000 a day. Okay. And we're getting them to you for like $3 a day because we've done all, we've gone around the world, we've gotten them and put them together. You cannot, you can, if you want to spend thousands of dollars a day, go for it, run around and get those nutrients. I have 15 books, 100 CDs, 50 DVDs. You can go to www.drjwallach.com, www.drjwallach.com and get my CDs and books and CDs. And, but it's too expensive to get these nutrients. And if you just get one, for instance, oh, I'm anemic, so I'm going to take iron. And then you die because you had a folic acid deficiency. Okay. It's one of those things where you have to take everything. Okay. I can prevent sickle cell anemia. It's easily preventable. It's not a genetic disease, Black folks. It's a very simple nutritional deficiency disease of the bone marrow of the embryos in early pregnancy. But the mother has to be taking these nutrients for 6 months before she gets pregnant. Okay, so that's the OBGYN's fault. When a baby's born with sickle cell anemia or thalassemia, which is sickle cell anemia in white folks, it's not a genetic disease of Black folks. In fact, there's another book and CD set called Black Gene Lies, which Pastor Creflo Dollar paid for, the first 10,000 copies of the book and CD because we saved his daughter. Okay, and so this information is there very cheaply. It's like $20 for the book or whatever it is, get the information. But if you think you can go around and buy these 215 nutrients, for pennies, no, you had to buy them by the hundreds of tons to be able to do it.
Thank you so much, Doc. Tremendous information, really appreciate it. Back to you,
Dr.
Chuck.
Paul, you're on mute. Paul, you're on mute.
All right. Personal testimonials can be very impressive, but do you have any scientific paper, any studies that have been done on a scientific
Okay, well, let me stop you there if I
basis?
may. Let me
Yeah.
stop you there. Remember, I just told you I did 1,700 autopsies on kids under the age of 10. That's scientific. Okay,
but
and
do
then,
you-
and wait, stop. And then I did 32,000 autopsies, okay, 20,000 in one study from the NIH grant. That was a scientific study. And I tracked every one of these down. I tracked them down. I did all the biochemistry, all the slides, all the nutrition. I looked at every one of the case reports of these people who had died. This was the biggest scientific investigation ever on human health. And I'm the sole author of it. 5,000 pages of science. Okay. My thesis, 5,000 pages, is in the Smithsonian Institute as a national treasure of science. So I hope that answers your question.
Oh, where is that published?
Where was it published? At W.B. Saunders, the biggest publishing house for medical textbooks in the world. You can go to Siri and say, hey, Siri, is Dr. Wallach's book, The Diseases of Exotic Animals, because it represents 450 species of animals, 17,000 animals, and 3,000 human beings from Barnes Hospital at that study. The study, okay, was unimpeachable, but remember, I'm tracking down I'm looking at every one of the records of these people who had died. I'm looking at all the blood tests. I'm looking at all the slides. I've looked at hundreds of millions of slides over these years. Nobody has done a study that big. Okay, so I know you're challenging me, but nobody has done the detailed study that I have. You find me another pathologist. Oh, and when you go to Siri and they say, okay, here's Dr. Wallach's book. It's beat up. They'll show you a cover of it. And it's beat up. We'll sell it to you for $4,500. But there's another little button underneath that cover of the book. You push that button and it'll say other options. And if it's in fair condition, it'll sell for $6,000. If it's in good condition, it sells for $8,000. If it's in exceptionally good condition, it sells for $12,000. If you can get it new in the box, still in the plastic wrapper, it sells for $25,000 to $35,000 each.
Thanks, Doc.
So,
Thank you.
so
Thank you,
I hope
sir.
that gives you some detail of the credibility.
It's in the Smithsonian Institution, Paul.
That's correct.
Thanks a lot.
Okay. Dr. Wallach, I really appreciate you stopping in, and you're a young man because you follow your own advice. So probably in 60 or 70 years, we'll have you back to talk with us again. I'm kidding, but we really do appreciate it. I've had some discussion with Reggie offline about this, and I found it pretty interesting. I got to tell you. And Linda, really appreciate you stopping in as well. And anything else for the good of
My
the club?
pleasure. Thank you.
And by the way, Linda is a much.
I'm back.
It just
All
looks.
right. Bill? And for all concerned, the 4-way test of the Rotary Club. 1, is it the truth? 2, is it fair to all concerned? 3, will it build goodwill and better friendships? And 4, will it be beneficial to all concerned? And we always have Stanley give us the 5th one.
Will we have fun? Thanks,
You bet
Doctor.
we will. Thank you all. We'll see you next week. And don't forget, it's an assembly meeting. And have a great week, everybody. Bye.
Thank you, Chuck.
You're welcome.